Before we begin, we just wanted to give you a sense of the tenor of our caucus by showing you this a brief clip that we showed to the caucus that we think kind of sums things up the way what we think people should be doing and acting in a very adult, responsible, and fair manner. So if you could roll that, please.
Congress consistently brings the government to the edge of default before facing its responsibility. This brinkmanship threatens the holders of government bonds and those who rely on Social Security and veteran benefits. Interest rates would skyrocket, instability would occur in financial markets, and the federal deficit would soar. The United States has a special responsibility to itself and the world to meet its obligations. It means we have a well-earned reputation for reliability and credibility, two things that set us apart from much of the world.
We've been doing this as a part so that our caucus can continue to get this message out. As many of you know, and have reported, a number of people in the public continue to look at this issue of the debt ceiling, especially in a time when they're most concerned about jobs, and say, what is this all about? And the frame that our erstwhile colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been using, that this is somehow cutting up the country's credit card and stopping us from spending more. Of course, all of you, being well-informed individuals that you are, know that that's not the case, that in fact this is defaulting on the nation's responsibility, and could not be put more bluntly or more articulately than Ronald Reagan laid it out in 1987. In fact, 17 times Ronald Reagan raised the debt ceiling, and without the taking of any hostages. Yes, there were political disagreements, as there always are, but at the end of the day, the country voted bipartisanly to make sure you didn't put people on the brink. I dare say that 17 times for him and 7 times for George Bush, we were not in the midst of the worst recession since the Great Depression. And yet when I go home, I continue to hear from my constituents about jobs. What the American people are concerned about is giving them the innovation, the infrastructure, and the education to put the middle class back to work. And so here we are engaged in what almost seems like high theater, the president bending over backwards to try to accommodate and cajole the Republicans into doing what should be the right thing. From my perspective, and I dare say a number of the members in our caucus, we should have a clean debt ceiling vote and take this cup away from the American people. We know that it will have the tremendous effects it will have on their household economies, let alone the disastrous global and national effects that the debt ceiling would, if it wasn't passed, would have. But also, I think this is what's at stake here. Why can't we keep people at the table discussing the most important issue of the day? Let's agree that cuts have to be made. Certainly we have. Chris Van Hollen, Javier Becerra have both participated in committees that recognize that. But the cuts should be strategic, and they should be strategic around growing jobs. Let's also agree that we have to grow this economy, and that we can make cuts in a way that both deal with waste, like the subsidies that oil companies get, but also provide revenues that are going to produce jobs. Let everything be about the creation of jobs. And I hope the President keeps Speaker Boehner and Mitch McConnell and everybody focused on that, especially as we head up to the August break and find that not one single job has been created or offered by this Republican-controlled House. Show us the jobs that are coming from all of these proposed cuts. The American people are going to have an opportunity here as we sit and do something that was routinely done for other presidents, but in this case, holding hostage Medicare and Social Security, which we will fight to make sure is not a part of any decision, but to make sure to make sure that what we're hearing back home in our district, which is still about the creation of jobs, gets addressed strategically. With that, the Vice Chairman of the caucus.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. 7 months into this Republican majority's leadership and not one single jobs bill to their credit. 14 days from plunging us into this economic black hole, and what are we going to debate on the floor of the House today? A cut and paste budget, which quite honestly is nothing more than a movie we've already seen before, and it wasn't too good the first time we saw it when Republicans virtually plunged the country into a stoppage of work and closed down the government in their budget debates of a few months ago. Here we go again. And so at some point the question must be asked of our Republican colleagues: when will this Congress focus on what the American public want to see? And that is job creation, working with the private sector to stimulate jobs, to give the business community the confidence to go out there and invest and hire. How do you inspire confidence out there in the private sector when the private sector doesn't know if it'll have a line of credit it can take out? Because if Republicans move forward with what they threaten, to not allow the government to pay its debts, I doubt there are going to be very many banks that are willing to lend a lot of folks money to open up a new business or hire new people or buy more product. And so we're waiting. We have never left the table of negotiations. Twice now we've seen Republicans walk out on those negotiations, and now the clock is ticking with 14 days to go. There are ways to get this done. You have to use a balanced approach, as we've always said. But the worst thing is when you walk away from a negotiation and walk forward into the economic abyss, taking everyone with you. We're ready, and we're waiting for Republicans to get serious. We'll get past this vote. Maybe once we get past this vote, Republicans will get serious about doing their job in leading the House of Representatives. When they do, Democrats will be ready. With that, let me move on to Chris Van Hollen.
Thank you, Javier. I want to thank my colleagues. In the bill that's on the floor today, the Republicans are playing a very dangerous game with the American economy and with jobs. We just heard this clip from Ronald Reagan about what the consequences are of failing to pay your bills. The American families can't choose not to pay their bills. They know if they don't pay their bills, their creditworthiness goes down, interest rates would go up around the country, and that would tank an already fragile economy. And what Republicans are saying in this bill today is that if others don't meet 100% of their demands to reduce the deficit their way, ending the Medicare guarantee, slashing education while protecting special interest tax breaks, if you don't do it 100% their way, they will allow the economy to go into a tailspin. That's what they're voting on today. Now, they already tried once, as my colleague said, to pass their budget that ends the Medicare guarantee, slashes Medicaid, that millions of seniors in nursing homes depend on. Then they tried it again. They tried to deem that passed. And it's not going anywhere in the Senate because the American people don't want to end the Medicare guarantee. They don't like that plan. They don't want to protect special interest tax breaks. So what are they trying to do today? They're going to pass a bill that says unless the Congress in the next few weeks passes a constitutional amendment that would manipulate the Constitution in a way to put their budget into the Constitution of the United States, they're going to refuse to pay the bills of the country and let the economy sink. This is not a garden variety balanced budget amendment. No one should be calling that. We can have an honest debate about the balanced budget amendment. This implants two mechanisms into the Constitution of the United States to address the deficit the way the Republicans want to do it, slashing Medicare, protecting special interest tax breaks. Why? They've got one provision they would write in the Constitution that says you can cut Medicare and Social Security with a simple majority vote. But if you want to cut a subsidy for an oil and gas company or if you want to cut the subsidy for a corporate jet, you need a 2/3 vote. They're going to implant that into the Constitution of the United States. They're going to put in the Constitution of the United States a preference for cutting Medicare and Social Security over cutting special interest tax breaks. Number two, they passed a constitution, their version of a twisted constitutional amendment out of Judiciary Committee the other day. It caps federal expenditure at 18%. The United States has not been under that level since 1966. And so by putting that artificial cap in place, they are guaranteeing that we're going to have to cut Medicare, which, by the way, was enacted in 1965. They're going to have to cut Social Security. You're going to have to make deep cuts in education while you protect these special interest tax breaks. And so really it is anti-democratic. It would prevent future Congresses from responding to the will of the American people to balance the budget in a different way, to balance the budget in a balanced way. So we need some revenue, to balance the budget in a way that allows us to address the needs of retiring baby boomers with respect to Social Security and Medicare. So let me just end with this. The President has put on the table a balanced approach. It's modeled after the bipartisan Simpson-Bowles proposal. It's not every detail, but it says we'll do $3 in spending cuts for every dollar of revenue increase. And we all know the Republicans walked away from the table, as Chairman Larson said, because they refused to allow 1 penny of revenue from closing a special interest tax loophole to go for the purpose of deficit reduction. That is their position. The American people want a balanced approach. So do we. Let's get on with the business of the country.
Time for a few questions, and then we're on our way. Well, thank you very much. And
Congressman, what is sort of the level of sentiment for the approach being crafted by Senators McConnell and Reid? Is that something that would be an acceptable alternative?
Well, I'd say right now that that's unfolding. We don't have all the details on it. I will say this. I think that our film was about an adult moment. I think from the standpoint of recognizing, even with opposition from people here in the House, Mitch McConnell is trying to get to a point where we don't default on our credit. He's doing so with Harry Reid. They're sitting down and trying to get to that point. The details of how they're going to get there haven't been fully fleshed out, perhaps amongst in their inner circles they have, but in terms of our caucus's ability to digest that, of course not. The majority of our caucus continues to believe, and we have voted on this once, but continues to believe that perhaps there, should have been a grander deal, that the President was sitting down and talking about doing something big for the country that would send an enormous message beyond this particular crisis. This, what I believe, is a manufactured crisis because it was routinely adopted by other Congresses when Presidents Bush and when Presidents Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and President Clinton needed this. Not without a back and forth and give and take over the debt ceiling, but it was commonplace. Granted, we believe that ought to happen, the debt limit ought to happen, but we ought to stay and discuss the serious nature of cuts that need to be done in a strategic manner to deal with the deficit that grow jobs. As Chris said, they have not been willing to deal with any of these subsidies that have been given out, any of the jobs that get shipped overseas, and alternatives and incentives that might be added to this. Everything should be about growing the economy and creating jobs, even as we approach the debt ceiling here. That is the opportunity. The President was thinking a big plan. They've walked away from that on a couple of times, but this is a very serious problem we face with the debt ceiling. So to the extent that they're taking an adult step in the Senate, and the Senate is taking action, well, in the House, we always welcome the Senate when they take action on just about anything. Yes.
What are your thoughts on this, specifically the commission idea that Senator Reid has proposed that would recommend
Again, I would say as long as the commission is focused, and it's my understanding, again, we don't have the details, that it would function like a BRAC commission, that unlike the constitutional amendment, as Chairman Van Hollen laid out, where there's this Hobson's choice where you're able to cut Medicare and Social Security, but not raise not be able to raise taxes or make the cuts on subsidies to oil companies, that this is going to be a balanced approach. This is what we've heard, that it'll be a balanced approach, and it'll be like a BRAC commission where it will create, again, get away from the arcane rule of the Senate where you require 60 votes to do something, that it would be an up or down vote that would be a balanced approach. That's our understanding to date with regard to that. I don't know if my colleagues want to add anything to that or not. Well, listen, thank you very much, and appreciate the time.